Hey guys, Karosif here with another review. This time I'll be reviewing the deluxe Time Majin Gates mode and Diend Ridewatch from Kamen Geo. This is Kamen Gates' version of the same transforming time machine used by Geo. Included in set are the two things listed in the title, as well as a dummy head part. So, let's get started. First up, we'll take a look at the Diend Ridewatch. This watch is black and cyan, of course Diend's color scheme. You have the front cover with Diend's symbol up top, and then year 2009 down the bottom when he first appeared. Then we can twist the face to reveal Diend's face. And this is a rare case of a near perfectly matched face to the Ridewatch design, because Diend's eyes are in this same kind of shape, where they jut out at these angles. And you can see there really isn't much discrepancy between where the eyes end and where the face begins. So it looks very good and very much fits with the design. Of course, on the back you have the rails and the QR code for Kamen Rising, the speaker, the button, all that jazz. So then we can get to the 2000 mix on its own. Kamen Ride. Decay's rival, who can summon various Kamen Riders, is Diend. Next up, we can use the Diend watch with the Deku driver and Gates watch for armor time. And there we have the transformation for Kamen Gates Diend armor, styled of course after the decayed armor transformation sounds. Now this one was not shown on the box, so it's unknown if this will actually appear in the show, as not even the Diend Ridewatch has appeared yet, and this may end up being a toy exclusive, though it's possible it will appear considering that Diend has recently appeared within the series itself. Then we'll activate finish time. That activates the attack time burst. Next, we can use the Jikan Zax, or any of the other weapons for that matter, for the weapon finish time. And in this case I'm using Yumi mode, since Diend is a shooting-based rider. And if we attach it to the Decayed Ridewatch, it'll activate a Decayed sound, as for secondary riders, it basically just groups them together with the main rider. Next, we'll take a look at the Time Majin Gates mode, starting in Battle mode. So this being just another version of the Time Majin, it shares basically a near identical mold to the original one, just with the color scheme changed around, switching out all of the different shades of grey as well as the bits of white and pink for mainly red, black, and yellow. You got the dummy head part modeled after the Gates Ridewatch, molded in the same plastic as the rest of the body, with just a sticker here, and being a lot thinner than a normal Ridewatch. You can see all of the details are the same, though you'll see that when it comes to paint applications, that does vary. The only real molding difference here is on the chest, where instead of it saying Robo in katakana, it says Robo in hiragana, as fitting with Kamen Gates' theme. So for the articulation, it's the same as before, but just for a refresher. We've got a slight pivot at the head so you can swivel it back and forth. The arms rotate around 360 degrees. Move outwards on this clip joint, which does have more range of movement if you actually rotate the arm. Got a bicep swivel, single joint elbows that go back and forth, and a wrist swivel. Then legs go forward and back, but no in and out movement. And a thigh swivel, and the knee joint. Now add in a bit of show accuracy, and take out the dummy head part. Then bring in the Gates Ridewatch. Just attach it in there. And while the color of the Geiz Ridewatch is a darker red than the rest of the body, it still looks pretty good in how it is a deluxe Ridewatch that is the proper size that head should be. And you can still activate the sounds all the same. And the other thing you can do is that you can open up the chest panel here. Then bring in the Rider Armor Series Kamen Gates figure. And put him inside so he can ride it. Of course, that's done by placing the legs down here, clipping in his waist here, then just closing up the door. And so there you got him inside, which doesn't do too much, except you can see the legs going into the actual legs of the Time Majin. For side-by-side comparison, here it is with, I guess what we now call the Time Majin GO mode. And as you can see that, like I said, the molding is basically the same aside from the chest, but the distribution of paint is different. Starting from the top, if we look at the shoulders, you can see that for GO, got this gunmetal paint going along here, but then a little bit of pink here, and then nothing for the rest of it. Whereas with Gates' version, you've got the yellow going across here, as well as up here for the hinge joint. For GO, you got paint here up top for these white parts as well, but then this part down here for the gray section is the plastic. Whereas for Gates, the only paint on this part is the red for the front shell, since that's actually part of a black plastic piece. Got the yellow running across here all the way. And then for the torso, we've actually got an interesting thing where the front half is black plastic and the back half is red. We've actually got some added paint applications down here on the thighs, where you have a little bit of red added in to help this kind of go along with this and give it a little bit of a different look. Then you can see that for the legs, you got a little bit of difference where you have two-toned legs for GO's version, but then a single tone for Gates's, as well as having paint on these panels for Gates's version that's not on GO's. Additionally, if we come around to the back, there is also a paint app added to these parts which will become part of the vehicle mode that isn't on GO's version, as well as paint up here on top. So there is actually more done to differentiate the two, besides just changing out the plastic colors and the different colors used. Next, we can transform it into vehicle mode. So for that, it's the same process as before. First off, remove the Ridewatch. Take these panels and flip them to the front. Rotate the arms so that these panels are forward, and then bring them together to collapse them like so, and click them into place. rotate around the fists, take this whole section and rotate upward, and bend the knees one click. And here we have vehicle mode. So again, same form, but different colors and different paint apps give it a much varied look. Now there really isn't too much you can do here, but there are a couple of things. First off, something that I somewhat showed in my review of Gio's version is that back here, you got this thing that looks like a seat. With the right positioning, you can have an RKF figure ride it, as long as you can get it to properly balance. Thankfully, there's enough of a seat that it actually can be done. And thanks to that torso joint, you can actually angle up the body so the head is facing forward. What's also interesting is that in one scene in the show, there's actually a point where Gio's Time Machine rides on Gates's, and while I thought this wasn't quite possible with the toys, turns out with the right balancing it is. So, we're going to take the Time Machine Gio mode, bend back the legs one click, as well as the knees. Then bring the arms inwards, about like that. And essentially try to balance it on top. Which is a tricky process, admittedly. But it's something I have done before, so it just needs a little finagling. So we get something like that. You can see that it is actually riding on top. And this is really just a big balancing act, as there is no attachment point, there is no handholds, or rather no open hands to actually hold on to the handles. But it works, and if you want to, you can actually essentially flip them around and do the same. And have Gates' Time Machine running on Gio's. Additionally, we can transform Gio's Time Machine for a comparison there. There we have our side-by-side. Where you can see, yeah, they are the same mold, but they do have those different looks to them. We also got a little bit of additional paint up here to complete this white section for Geiz' version. And of course we have the difference here with a black cockpit compared to a pink one. And again we have this section of yellow paint on top here, whereas there's no paint over here. But besides that, they're basically identical. And finally, the Time Machine Gates mode, like with the Gio mode, is compatible with certain weapons from the RKF Rider Armor series. This is something they only briefly touched on in my review of the original, and something I didn't fully understand the actual scope of compatibility with until getting the new one, because there was a certain port, or certain pair of ports that I wasn't aware of that could be used. So as you can see, the weapons compatible here are the ones from the Build Armor, X8 Armor, Forza Armor, and O's Armor. And for this, I'm actually going to be using both timings to demonstrate it. First off, we have the standard one, which it really showed, which was using the drill weapon from the build armor, which goes in there. You can also swap out the Geiz Ridewatch with the build Ridewatch to match it, just like that. And for GOs, we'll bring in the Forza Ridewatch and plug that in there. Then for his rocket weapons, we're not going to be using this port, but instead this is actually a port to use this kind of weapon on. You can see it has that same L shape. You basically just need to plug that in right in there, and then you'll have it attached. And do the same on the other side. Although that being said, they both still do have the problem of the whole way that they're angled in backwards instead of being flush with the arms. Then, getting back to the Gates one, we'll switch out the build Ridewatch for the X-Aid Ridewatch. Then we'll use this port for X-Aid Armor's hammer weapons. And obviously these have to be detached from the rest of the armor in order for this to be possible. And then, coming over to build once again, to GOs once again, we'll switch out the Forza watch for the O's watch, which of course was included with the original Time Majin. Then, input the claw attachment onto the right arm. And the non-claw attachment to the left arm, although this is technically inaccurate, as within the show it actually had two claws, but because of the way that the armor was designed, it only has just the one. And of course, as a bonus, I'll be just doing one more head change to show you what the Time Majin Gates mode looks like with the Diend Ridewatch attached. And there we have the two Time Majins with their included Ridewatches attached as the heads. And there we go. So overall, upon basically re-reviewing the Time Majin, I realized that I don't think I gave it quite enough credit in my original review. In that old one, I basically kind of denounced it for being sort of a subpar toy that is mostly just good for the included Ridewatch, but upon getting this new version and really upon learning more about what it can do and what its range of playability is, I feel like it actually is something that I should have given more credit to, because it is definitely worth it for both the toy itself and the Ridewatch. First off, I would say that even though it does have somewhat limited articulation, there is some stuff you can do with it that can work. For example, you can actually change around the angle of its standing position using the legs, either by moving one leg forward or one leg back. And with the right balance, it can actually stand on those legs. Not to mention that, as far as the articulation goes, aside from the standard stuff, you do have this inward movement that I completely ignored, which, even though it's part of the transformation, can lead you to a wider range of poses. So while it's not action figure level quality of articulation, or action figure level, There is a good amount of dynamic posing you can do with the Time Machine. Not to mention that in the vehicle mode, you can actually have a figure ride on it, and if you have both, as I showed, though it's a bit tricky to pull off, you can have one Time Machine riding another, which is pretty cool imagery. Plus, of course, the biggest thing that I kind of failed on in the last review was the amount of weapons that are compatible with it. As I showed, there are 4 sets, the ones that basically have arm weapons to them. Though I will still say that it's a flawed feature, not only because of the size discrepancy between the scale of the Time Machine and the scale of weapons, but also because of the angle. And unfortunately, that's something that I feel like was a bit failed or kind of doomed in the first place, because in the show they are angled like that. It's just that the weapons attack in such a way that they do face forward. They just didn't really engineer that into the toy. But of course you still also have compatibility with other things like switching out the different ride watches for the head, as well as putting figures inside. So overall, in addition to having this potentially toy line exclusive ride watch in the form of Diend's watch, you also have a quite solid toy to go along with it. And personally, I prefer the Gates mode Time Machine to Geo's because I feel like the color scheme is a lot more bright and vibrant, and I'll admit I favor Gates over Geo. Though, as I showed, you can get a certain amount of playability if you have both, and of course, both of them do have different watches. So, if you're interested, I would definitely say to try to pick this up. It does have more of a price tag around $60 to $70, but for what's worth, I do think that it is generally worth it to get this toy. And I could be wrong on the price, but it is a more high-end item. That being said, if you are willing to put down that money, I think that if you have the stuff to go along with it, and if you can really look at what it has rather than what it doesn't, it is a fun and satisfying toy. Next time, I'll be reviewing the Ryuso Set 01 and Ryuso Buckle. So, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and if you're new and would like to see more, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. And for now, this is Karo60, writing off.